us together to raise the voice.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic. From the Republic Media Network headquarters, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate. Arnab Goswami on the debate.
The most interesting thing for me when I look at the American elections from an Indian perspective or a global perspective is the death of the American media. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the biggest story of the American election for me as a journalist and for you as well. If you want to look at it, the big story is the death of the American media. There is no objective media in the United States of America anymore. The second point in my view is that this is not a battle between Donald Trump and this puppet called Kamala Harris. The battle is between Donald Trump and a large section of the media. It is the media that has taken it upon itself to defeat Donald Trump. They have made it a personal agenda. If Donald Trump wins, this large section of the American media will lose. If Donald Trump loses, this large section of the American media will win. It is a do or die for large sections of the American media, like the New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN. They are all largely anti-Trump, and they make no bones about it. They are not even pretending to be neutral. It's an all-out battle. They have to stop Donald Trump from winning somehow. Let me ask you, viewers, does this ring a bell for you in India? Does it sound like the way large section of the media have positioned themselves in the past against Narendra Modi? Think about it. However, I want to place some facts before you as well. If some people say that, no, this is an exaggeration, well, I tell them the one big lesson of the coverage of the American election and all those people in India, who always tell us, look at BBC, look at CNN, learn coverage from them. Today, we despise the way in which the BBC and CNN have become fellow travelers of a political party. The BBC has become a fellow traveler of the Hamas. The BBC is a fellow traveler of Zelensky. The BBC is a fellow traveler, and CNN are fellow travelers with Kamala Harris. They made it deeply personal, deeply, deeply personal. Let me share some statistics. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the Media Research Center, ABC, CBS, and NBC have dedicated 200 minutes of airtime, predominantly focusing on negative coverage of controversies around Trump while downplaying or ignoring issues related to Harris. In the 72 hours after the assassination attempt on Trump, ABC, CBS, and NBC coverage of Trump was 95% negative, which is 5% casting Trump in a positive light, which means that after he survives an assassination attempt, these networks blame him, not the assassin. That's how biased they become. They just don't care anymore. For them, it's deeply, deeply personal. When these people watch the results today, I think many of them are just going to have a heart attack if Trump comes close to winning. In fact, I won't be surprised if many of these biased news networks in America and around the world call the election for Harris even before the counting starts. Ladies and gentlemen, the entire issue is now of endorsements. If you do not endorse Kamala Harris, you're a bad person. If you try to remain neutral, you must be boycotted. The only person they can't tackle in all of this is Elon Musk, because they need Musk's cars and they need Musk's rockets. Viewers, American politics is taking a very interesting turn. For me, as a journalist in India, the big headline is the death of the media. Even if that section of the media wins, if Trump loses, it would have lost the battle for respect, which is why it is time for Indian news networks, networks from our part of the world, to dominate the global airwaves. Our time is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, the second debate this evening, the real battle, in my view, is not Trump versus Kamala Harris, it's Trump versus media. Debate number 1 tonight. You have a huge debate on madrasas and why the Supreme Court's decision on madrasas and secular education is so important. That's in a few minutes. And ladies and gentlemen, at 9 o'clock, the lie called Wikipedia, how it is the most untrustworthy source in the world, the inside details of the dirty details, the dangerous details of how it is operating, and the truth about this most untrustworthy publishing house is at 9 o'clock tonight. And here are the headlines this Tuesday evening on the debate tonight. Wikipedia is in huge trouble. The government takes a position on Wikipedia. This Wikipedia has been criticized everywhere for its falsehoods, its lies, and its lack of responsibility. But the details of the shadowy operation with shadowy funding are going to be put out for everyone at 9 o'clock tonight. The Supreme Court paves the way for madrasa reform, upholds the Uttar Pradesh Madarsa Act, but says the provision on awarding of higher degrees is in conflict with the provisions of the University Grants Commission. Heavy campaigning in poll-bound Jharkhand. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's blitzkrieg. He compares Soren Minister Alamgir with Aurangzeb. And stand by for the most relevant and extensive and fast coverage on the run to the White House, the race to the 270 mark, Trump or Harris. The build-up has started on Republic. And first, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court of India has upheld the constitutional validity of the Uttar Pradesh Madarsa Education Act. This decision is already sparking an intense debate because questions are asked about the kind of education one receives in madrasas, whether they need to be modernized, and what is a secular education, what is a modern education, and what is not. Let's debate.
In a far-reaching verdict, the Supreme Court has upheld the constitutional validity of the UP Madrasa Education Act. It set aside the Allahabad High Court's March judgment that declared the act unconstitutional and a violation of the principles of secularism. The top court observed that the act regulates education in madrasas and provides education to lakhs of students, empowering them to lead a better life and earn a livelihood when they grow up. The apex body also said that the act is within the legislative competence of the state. The verdict has been widely welcomed.
ये एक बहुत खुशी और मसरत का मकाम है कि हम लोग अपने पूरी आज़ादी के साथ, पूरी कानूनी आज़ादी के साथ अपने इन मदरसों को रन करते रहेंगे।
बहुत खुशी है मुझे, जो फैसला है बहुत अच्छा फैसला आया है। मदरसे बिल्कुल चलते रहना चाहिए और मैं कहता हूँ देश में कोई भी ऐसे लोग नहीं हैं कि जो जाके महल्लों से यतीम बच्चों को उठाएं जिनके माँ बाप मर गए हैं, जिनके पास खाने को नहीं है। मदरसे वाले उनको उठाते हैं, ले जाते हैं, नहलाते धुलाते हैं, कपड़ा दिलाते हैं और एक अच्छा इंसान बना के निकलते हैं।
सुप्रीम कोर्ट के इस फैसले का स्वागत करता हूँ और ये सही फैसला है कि मदरसे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के मुताबिक ही चलाए जा रहे हैं और अक़लियतों को, मुसलमानों को हक़ हासिल है कि वो अपनी मर्ज़ी के मदरसे चलाएं।
The BJP is all praise for UP Chief Minister Yogi modernizing madrasas.
हमारे मुस्लिम समाज के बच्चे भी आगे आए और डॉक्टर, इंजीनियर, IAS, IPA बने, इसलिए हमने मदरसा मॉडर्नाइजेशन किया है आदरणीय योगी सरकार ने। तो जो माननीय सर्वोच्च न्यायालय का फैसला है हम उसका स्वागत करते हैं और हम उसके अनुपालन में काम करते हैं। आदरणीय मोदी जी ने साफ कह दिया था कि एक हाथ में कुरान, एक हाथ में कंप्यूटर, तो आप कुरान भी लीजिए और कंप्यूटर हम इसलिए दे रहे हैं कि दुनिया हासिल करें।
The Supreme Court bench, however, noted that while the act is valid, provisions granting higher education degrees under the Fazil and Kamil programs conflict the University Grants Commission Act. Still, it's a legal respite for lakhs of madrasa students across Uttar Pradesh. So the question is, why were madrasa reforms being opposed in the name of secularism?
So there are two ways of looking at it. Either you can say that the Supreme Court has upheld the validity of the UP Madarsa Act. The second way of looking at it is that modernization of madrasas becomes very important now. Giving proper education. And the Supreme Court says that the Madrasa Act regulates the standard of education in a madrasa as recognized by the board for imparting madrasa education is consistent with the positive obligation of the state to ensure that students studying in recognized madrasas attain a level of competency which will allow them to effectively participate in society and to earn a living. Only learning about religion, therefore, will not be enough. Modernization of madrasas becomes an essential and very important thing in our society now, so that students studying in madrasas can become lawyers, engineers, or at least aspire to become doctors and software professionals. That is my reading. So there has to be a secular standard of education. Swapnil, how do you read what the Supreme Court has said today?
Arnab, the Supreme Court has pretty much underwritten the fact that education is a key to not only maintain secularism, but also to ensure that it's continuous. Given the fact that we have about 27 crores minorities in this country, which in itself forms in some form of a majority, I think education will pave a big way, Arnab, not only for secular structure, but even for the establishment, not only of a uniform country, but also of the uniform civil code. I think this is another precursor or a step in the right direction where the Uniform Civil Code is a much wanted necessity. And the Supreme Court is ensuring that step by step, let us go ahead with this. It has ensured, of course, on the bare perusal of the UGC Act, it has said that, entry 66 of the concurrent list 1, which is the union list, says that, you cannot, the state cannot subjugate, the state has to subjugate itself to that. And then entry 25 of the concurrent list is where the state has powers limited. So it has subjugated itself to the UGC Act. So the Fazil and the Kamil degrees have been taken out of the equation. So that is something which I am very, very happy about, that the court has ensured that there is an equitable balance between the two lists, because the concurrent list has to eventually subjugate itself to the union list if there is a superriding power in the union list on that particular subject. Now, to make it very easy, Arnab, for your viewers, basically, in simpliciter language, the Supreme Court is saying that yes, Article 30 of the Constitution empowers the the minorities to administer and establish and administer the educational institutions. But at the same time, you have to remember the preambular promise of secularism, and it has to be in a modernized manner. It cannot be ossified thinking from ghettos, and it needs to move shoulder to shoulder if the minorities need to come up and really walk shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the India. And that's why the reason you see the UP...
Okay, I'll open the debate now, Swapnil. Yeah. I don't see any reason why anyone should oppose the modernization of madrasas. Yeah. Let madrasas stay, let legal madrasas stay, Ratan Sharda. Yeah. But then I think the education system in madrasas should be brought in line with 2024. Right? Ratan Sharda, how do you view this? What would you say to Anurag Bhadouria?
And Anurag Bhadouria is already celebrating this particular judgment, so what can I tell him? My view is that as far as Madrasa Act is concerned, what we have come to is that we have modernized the madrasas.
आप संविधान और न्यायपालिका को नहीं मानते तो इसमें मेरी कोई गलती नहीं है। हम हिंदुस्तानी हैं।
अनुराग जी, मैंने आपको बधाई दी, आपको मैंने कुछ कहा नहीं, आप क्यों भड़क रहे हैं? आपको बोलने की इतनी आदत है, किसी को बोलने नहीं देते आप। ये बड़ी समस्या आपके साथ कि आप टीवी के सामने आए कि आपका मुंह बंद ही नहीं होता है। मैं कुछ बोल लूं, मैं कुछ बोल लूं, ठीक है, आपको और भड़काने की बात करूं, मैं क्या करूं?
We go with the breaking news. Ratan Sharda, let him complete what he wants to say and then I'll bring you in. Yes.
आपको सिर्फ
बोलिए अनुराग जी, बोलिए।
समाज के अंदर में जब भी बात करनी है तो हमेशा नहीं, मैं शारदा जी, आप जब भी मुंह खोलते हैं तो कभी हिंदुस्तानी की बात नहीं करते क्या? हिंदुस्तानी में तो सभी लोग आते हैं ना, हिंदुस्तानी कोई भी हो, चाहे हिंदू हो, मुस्लिम हो, सिख हो, ईसाई हो, अगड़े पिछड़ो, हम सब हिंदुस्तानी हैं। किसी के जैसे हिंदुस्तानी की कोई बात होती है, आप बोल, मुझे पता ना क्या बोलना चाहते, इतने सालों से क्या बोल रहे हो आप, इतने आप नहीं, आपका बोलने का मतलब मैं समझ गया था ना क्या बोलना चाहते हो आप, समझ है मुझे, इसके लिए तो समझ क्या बोलना चाह रहे हैं आप। इसलिए कम से कम की बात करूं, नहीं मैं भड़क इस बात पे रहा हूं, आप टॉन्ट मारते हो ना,
मुस्लिम पढ़ता है, मैंने कुछ कहा इस बारे में। आपकी समस्या है कि आप हर चीज को हरे चश्मे से देखते हैं, जरा चश्मा उतारिए। हम जजमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, हम कोई और बात नहीं कर रहे हैं। आपको जो पीड़ा है मुझे पता नहीं चलता कि पीड़ित क्यों है। जजमेंट आपके फेवर में है तब भी आप पीड़ित हैं, मुस्लिम समाज के बारे में अच्छी है तब भी आप पीड़ित हैं। आपने पीड़ा से बाहर निकलेंगे, मुझे बताइए आप किस बात से पीड़ित हैं? ऐसी कौन सी बात मैंने कही कि आपको पीड़ा लग गया? मुझे बताइए ना।
आपके अंदर से निकल गया ना,
सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जजमेंट दिया मदरसा के फेवर में, उसके मॉडरेशन के फेवर में, आप फिर भी पीड़ित हैं। आप चाहते हैं कोई इस बारे में बात ही मत करें, आप चाहते हैं हम जो कहे उस पर झंडा लगा दें, मुंह बंद रख लें। ऐसे मुंह बंद नहीं होगा। आप सुप्रीम, आप यूपी में अपने जितने दंगे फंदे करके आपको मुंह बंद करने करिए आप, लेकिन टीवी पे आप मेरा मुंह बंद नहीं कर सकते। आप बोलते रहेंगे फिर मैं बोलूंगा। अब मैं ये कहता हूं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा जी और जीरो दे। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि आर्टिकल 30 अलाउज minorities to run their own institutions, but should they allow the institution only to give religious education?
Ratan Sharda, please. Ratan Sharda, bring him
equal to education. So is religious education equal to academic education? So Fazil and Nazil judgment is what is paining him. If it is secularism, they say we are nurturing secularism 0 though, why has place of worship act not been repealed? Why the act of right to education exempting minorities not removed? Why the Waqf Board Act, which is totally against secularism, why that is being nurtured by these people? So you cannot have a hypocritical stand. If you say this Vinod secularism, you say every people must have right to live or jinedo, then please repeal Waqf Act Board, which is totally against and every other community in India. Please see to it that place of worship act does not stop us Hindus to gain their right. Please see to it that this this particular right to education is not exempt for the minorities because they are part of the same society. वही हिंदुस्तानी है जिनकी बात आप कर रहे हो. हिंदुस्तानी अगर है तो राइट टू एजुकेशन में सभी हिस्सा लें. राइट टू एजुकेशन में क्यों नहीं अच्छे मदरसे, क्यों नहीं अच्छे स्कूल, क्यों नहीं अच्छे इंजीनियरिंग के अंदर आपको एडमिशन मिलती, क्यों राइट टू एजुकेशन के अंदर जामिया मिलिया में, अलीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी में दलितों को एडमिशन नहीं मिलती, दलितों के करवाए अलीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी में जामिया मिलिया में, तब सेक्युलरिज्म की दहाई क्यों दे रहे हैं? What is your debate on secularism where you cannot open your mouth about
I think the moot point is, are we a secular country? And with the greatest of respect to the Supreme Court, please, if the volume can come down, with the greatest of respect to the Supreme Court, the question that we must ask, with respect to their lordships, I respect their lordships, I respect the Supreme Court a lot. But I cannot understand why, if we are a secular country, the right to education does not apply to minority education institutions. If it applies to institutions run by the majority community, why should the right to education not apply for minority education institutions if we are a secular country? What's the logic there? Does this make us a more inclusive country or a more exclusive country, Swapnil?
Arnab,
Yes,
Arnab, that is reservation. They have abolished from Jamia
and a
Millia.
lot of lawyers have debated it within the corridors of the courts as well. And this is something which I've tried to read it outside, inside, every single possible way. But I think what the logic of the Supreme Court in its interpretative aspect, and this is more a question to do or not with the Parliament. Why has the Parliament enacted it in such a manner that it does not apply to the minority institutions? And then the Supreme Court's job is basically interpret it. Now to interpret it in the more evolved manner that you are talking about is absolutely glorious and noble. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court cannot rewrite the legislative aspect. So it is the Parliament's job to understand this aspect. Now the point is, Arnab, where I have read it and where I have understood it is that if you remember, if you know, and I'm sure you know this, that there is an establishment clause in the US Constitution which says separation of the church from the state. Neither the government controls religion nor there is a religion controlling the government. So at the end of the day, what this act was trying to do, whereby excluding the minority institutions, is that let the right of education be sacrosanct itself. It should not apply to that, because then there is Article 30, which wants to establish and administer educational institutions in its own way. So now if there is a secular criminal code, if there is a secular civil code, which is called the Uniform Civil Code, then maybe what you're asking is something which the Parliament may do.
And there is another aspect. There's another aspect. And I would say this to people running Hindu institutions also. I would say, suppose there is somebody running a Hindu institution where they want to focus on teaching about the Veda, Upanishads, Hindu history, etc., Hindu Sanskrit texts. I feel proud today when I go to places and Vedic mathematics, Vedic sciences, Vedic philosophy is taught. I feel they are doing a great service to Hindu culture and civilization, but I would want those students also to parallel take the class 10 and class 12 CBSE or ICSE or state board exam, because then nobody has to take their child out of a Vedic institution or a madrasa. They can do both. What I don't understand is why people like Anurag Bhadouria will not want somebody studying in a madrasa to study history, physics, chemistry, biology, computer science and English under a CBSE board. वो मदरसे की चीज भी पढ़े. मैं बहुत लोगों को जानता हूं अनुराग जी, जो बच्चों को मदरसे से निकाल देते हैं क्योंकि वो चाहते हैं वो अंग्रेजी सीखे, कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम में पार्ट ले, और मदरसे में कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम के लिए प्रिपरेशन नहीं हो सकती है. और आप किसी 20 साल के युवा को नहीं बोल सकते हैं कि ठीक है अभी आप क्लास 10 की पढ़ाई शुरू कीजिए. तो आप इम्प्रैक्टिकल बातें कहने और इससे नुकसान होता है बच्चों का. कल कोई मदरसे में पढ़ते हुए बच्चे नीट की एग्जाम, IIT की एग्जाम देना चाहेंगे, आप रोकना क्यों चाहते हैं उनको?
अरे हल्ला क्यों
आप रोकना क्यों चाहते हैं उनको? आप कौन होते हैं उनको रोकने के लिए? अपनी राजनीति अपनी जगह.
जिसको अरे आप कौन होते हो हल्ला मचाने वाले? बेवजह हल्ला मचा रहे हैं.
मीडिया पूछ रहे हैं.
कोई किसी को नहीं रोकता है. जिसको IIT की तैयारी करनी है वो उसके हिसाब से तैयारी करता है.
कैसे करेंगे जहाँ पे आप मौका नहीं देते मदरसे में कि कोई कंप्यूटर साइंस, फिजिक्स, हिस्ट्री, केमिस्ट्री, बायोलॉजी, नीट की परीक्षा, IIT जॉइंट एंट्रेंस की परीक्षा आपको लगता है ये बहुत आसान है?
दूसरे स्कूलों में
आप आसान लगता है आपको?
कमाल की बात कर रहे हैं
आप नहीं चाहते जिसका बेस्ट ऑफ बोथ वर्ल्ड्स मिले? आप लोगों को गुमराह कर रहे हैं. आप कितने बच्चों का जीवन खराब कर रहे हैं क्योंकि आप उनको एक सेक्युलर एजुकेशन देने से आप रोक रहे हैं. आपने कहाँ पढ़ाई लिखाई की थी बताइए तो? आपने कहाँ पे पढ़ाई की थी? Where have you studied?
आप हल्ला क्यों मत?
आपने कहाँ पे पढ़ाई की है?
आप हल्ला क्यों मत?
आप जो बोल रहे हैं आपने कहाँ पे पढ़ाई की है?
अरे मेरी बात सुनो. आप
बोलिए ना, क्यों नहीं बोल रहे? छुपा क्यों रहे?
स्कूल में पढ़ा हूँ.
छुपा क्यों रहे?
स्कूल से पढ़ा हूँ, क्या दिक्कत?
छुपा
तो गाँव के स्कूल से पढ़ा हूँ.
कहाँ से?
नहीं मैं क्यों छुपा? मैं तो गाँव के स्कूल से पढ़ा हूँ.
कॉलेज कहाँ से की है?
पढ़ाना क्या होता है?
कॉलेज कहाँ से की है?
नहीं हूँ मैं.
कॉलेज कहाँ से की है?
डंके की चोट में बोलता हूँ.
अरे छोड़िए डंके की चोट में, मैं भी बोल रहा हूँ कि केंद्रीय विद्यालय में पढ़ा है मैंने. आप बोलिए आपने कॉलेज कहां से की है?
समझ में नहीं आया.
अरे कोई माइनॉरिटी इंस्टीट्यूशन से की है क्या आपने?
मदरसे में पढ़ेगा. जिसको कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में पढ़ना हो कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में.
कॉलेज कहां से की?
सरकारी स्कूल में पढ़ना हो सरकारी.
किस बोर्ड में पढ़ाई लिखाई की आपने? किस बोर्ड में पढ़ाई लिखाई की आपने?
भाई जिसको
क्या जरूरत थी आपको?
पढ़ना होगा दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ेगा. जिसको लखनऊ यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ना होगा लखनऊ यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ेगा. जिसको इलाहाबाद में पढ़ना होगा इलाहाबाद यूनिवर्सिटी.
अरे एडमिशन कैसे मिलेगा उनको? प्रैक्टिकल बात कीजिए.
भाई मेरे समाज में जो
OBC का
मदरसे
admission
में पढ़ेगा वो
नहीं
मदरसे की
मिलती,
पढ़ाई
अलीगढ़
पढ़
में
रहा
नहीं
है,
मिलती।
वही मदरसे
आप
वाले
क्या
जो
बोलते हैं,
लड़के
जहाँ मर्जी पढ़
कॉन्वेंट में
लीजिए।
पढ़ना चाहते हो
आप
कॉन्वेंट में ही
minority
पढ़ते हैं, ऐसा
student
नहीं
नहीं
है
पढ़ सकते
कि
दलित।
मुस्लिम बच्चे कॉन्वेंट में
आप
नहीं पढ़ते
समझिए जरा,
हैं।
बड़े
किसने
दलित की
आपको बोला है
बातें
कि
करते हैं
माइनॉरिटी
ना।
के बच्चे कॉन्वेंट में नहीं
यूनिवर्सिटी में
पढ़ते?
करवाइए उनका
किसने आपको-
Ratan Sharda, moving on.
करवाइए जामिया मिलिया में रिजर्वेशन वापस दलितों का, इनका मुंह कैसे खुल जाता है? अलीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी they cancelled the reservation of Dalits in Aligarh University. SP doesn't speak about it. He says study anywhere. No, sir, you cannot study in Aligarh University. If you are a Dalit, you cannot study in Jamia Millia if you are a Dalit. And this fellow comes and lectures on secularism, he lectures on casteism, he lectures on madrasa, but he has no
I'm all
answer
for madrasa
why
education,
cannot-
provided it's a legal madrasa, and I want students in madrasas to be able to give CBSE, ICSE examination, +2 level, get admission to good colleges, universities, become doctors and computer scientists. But Anurag does not want that. Moving on, ladies and